Good afternoon, my friends. Welcome to another Monday, a very sunny Monday here in England. This is another live Avolites training session. Coming up today, we have an AI session now. I'm going to be looking at preparing media for AI. Then coming up later tonight at 9 p.m. GMT, or BST, UK time, let's go for that, which is in about 4.5 hours, 5.5 hours. Cade is going to be talking about networking and a few other things. Okay, so the topic for today is we are going to look at encoding media and preparing media for AI. Okay, so we have our own codec, the AIM codec, AIM, so it's AI media. It's a specialist codec that we've created for the software and gives what we believe to be the best performance possible. It is optimized for our system, so when we code and we test, we are actually using this codec ourselves for all of our figures that we come up with. So if ever you want to sort of fall in line with what we're getting out of systems, you really do need to have to use the AIM codec. So the AIM codec itself is hardware accelerated. That means we use some features of the graphics card to play back very large files that if you process through your CPU would potentially be a little bit too big to work with in real time. So let's have a look at how we get our media into the AIM codec. So we'll start off with AI itself. So in version 11 of AI, we introduced a media transcoder. So a media transcoder is something which can convert media from one format into another format for us. So let's have a look at how we do that in AI first. Then after that we'll step on and we'll look at using the Adobe plugins, and then we'll look at using a freeware piece of software on the PC which can also convert to AIM. Okay, so first of all what I'm going to do in AI, I'm going to just build myself a couple of banks. I'm just going to call these render 1. I just need a couple of banks for this demonstration, so we're going to go for render 2. And then I might be really revolutionary and call the third one render 3. Okay. So what I'm then going to do, let's go into render 1 actually. I'm going to drag the media in here. Now I've just got a couple of clips here. They are the same clip, but I've just done duplicates of them, just so I've got a few pieces of media here, because there's a few things I can show in relation to the media queue. Okay, so the first thing that we see, and you'll see this from version 11 onwards of AI, so if you're using an earlier version and you don't see this, don't worry. If you bring in a clip that's not in the AIM codec, it will be marked as unsupported. Now it's possible, so that clip that doesn't actually play, some clips which are marked as unsupported will actually play, but it's like us giving a warning saying you're not using them in the ideal format, so there is the potential for issues to arise. So when we add these into AI, we see that they're marked as unsupported, and what AI does is it adds them automatically to our transcoder queue. So up on the right of the interface, we've got this couple of tabs here. We've got the Operate tab, which is the main performance page that we're seeing here. But we also have a Manage tab. So if I give that a click, and we'll see a different window pop up. So what we can see here, we've got a jobs list, and it's actually added each of those 4 files that I've already dragged in. Now, when we're doing our conversion, it's automatically going to convert to our highest quality AIM media format, which is what we refer to as SuperStream. If you're using something like the Adobe encoder or an external coder, we give you a few more options. In AI, we've just kept it simple at the moment so that you know that they're in a best quality. And don't be put off by the file size that you might encounter with AIM. The reason the files are quite large is it massively reduces the overheads required when you're playing back the files. So for that reason, we always convert to our best format, SuperStream. So the transcoder itself, if there's audio in the file, it will preserve the audio. It does allow now, the AI transcoder and the Adobe transcoder does allow for up to 7.1 surround compatibility, so that's 8 channels of audio. And it will just do a straight one-to-one copy, so whatever's on channel 2 will go on to channel 2 on the transcoded version, whatever on channel 5 will go to channel 5. There's no reordering or editing of channels or anything like that. The transcoder will also support an alpha channel, so if you have a transparency channel within your media, so you might use one of those if you've got sort of a company logo. So if you look at the way, for instance, the AI logo is floating in the bottom corner, it's not a standard square or rectangular image, it's actually looking specifically at that circle. And if you think back to sort of television idents, they often have the logo of the channel in the corner, and it's just the logo, and the back of it is transparent. So that has what we call an alpha channel. So those alpha channels will be preserved when using the AI transcoder. So actually on the list itself, we can see an entry for each job in our queue. On the left, we have got a button to enable or disable the audio. So we could have some files are transcoding their audio, like number 1 and 3 are now going to use audio, whereas number 2 and number 4 are not going to transcode any audio. I'm just going to turn that back off for now. We also have to think about the destination folder. Now, there is a default media folder. Anything that's added to AI will use the current default media folder, and what it will do is it will actually create, what we're going to do is we're going to tell these clips to render, and when they're rendered to place them in a specific bank. And what it will do is within this media folder, C Avolites AI Distrib Media, it will create a folder for each of those banks and then put the newly rendered version into that folder. So it's non-destructive, it doesn't destroy the original file. I have just chosen to accept my default media path here. If I wanted to, I can click on this folder on the bottom right of that window and actually change that overall media path. This is the same media path that you specify in the system settings, so if you're using file folder method, it's worth adhering to that structure. So what we can then do, I could just press play and render this queue out, and what it will do is it will take the original clips here and just replace them all. Now I don't want to do that, I want to distribute them amongst these banks. So let's leave, with this arrow here we can actually choose the destination. So I'm going to leave my first clip in that render 1 bank, we're going to put the second one into render 2, the third one into render 3, and then we'll put that last one into render 2 as well. Now what we can also do, if we need to change the order here, if you select a clip and then right click on it, you can actually hold the right mouse button in and you can see my cursor sort of flashes in between the clips, so you can drop that clip anywhere in your list that you want and sort of reorder them as you need. The allow duplicates button is quite useful. Sometimes you might actually want to re-encode the same clip twice for some reason. By default, AI will ignore any duplicated clips when using the transcoder, but that switch up there allows you to allow duplicates. You can also use the trash can icon to delete any selected files from the list. We can do shift and left click to multi-select items there as well. And you can even use the plus icon at the top to add files directly into the media queue, like that, the media transcoder queue. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start this off and then I'm just going to pause it just very slightly when we get into it. So now that we are running, there we go. So for a start, we can see that I can pause this transcoder as we go along. Now the reason I wanted to pause it is I wanted to point to some of these boxes so that I can get you to look at them whilst they're running. So each job in the queue will have its own feedback monitor telling you how much the percentage of that specific task is done. And then at the very top here, we get an overall percentage for the total list of jobs. And the one at the top will actually tell us on which numbered job we are currently in. So I'm just going to press play to continue that transcoding. So there you can see it's on file 1 of 4, and it's roughly 14% through the total job length, whereas this individual file is nearly done, in fact, 90, 100%. There you go. So it's going to move on to the next job in the queue, and it's telling us that that first job was done. Okay, so what I'm going to do whilst that is happening, let's just go and, so I can leave this window and it will continue transcoding in the background. What I'm going to do, I am going to go to render 2, so bank number 2, render 2. So we had 2 files. In fact, let's wait for that file to be complete in there first. So we won't see anything in that bank until it's complete. There we go. In fact, what we'll do, let's wait for this one to complete itself, because we're very nearly there now. 50, 60%, 70%, 80%, 90, 100%. Okay, so we're good there. So all of the jobs in this list are done, and it tells us at the top that the transcoding is complete. Okay, so let's go back to our operate page. So we dropped all the clips originally into render 1. There we go. So, and I have just suffered an error there. Okay, I have suffered an error, so that should have copied those to the different banks, and for some reason it hasn't at all. We're going to mark that one down to experience. Okay, so we can see here basically that it's replaced all of the clips which were originally unsupported clips, and when we try to play them before, it wouldn't play back. So now, if I give that a play, that should play back perfectly. If I go into the clip there, we can see that it has converted it to AIM Superstream 24-bit, and it has not given us an audio file because I didn't want audio on that particular clip. Okay, so that was a quick look at AI's internal transcoder. Now, there are a lot of people out there who receive their clips already in the correct format. So let's look at a couple of ways that you can convert your AIM clips into AIM from external softwares. So I'm just going to jump out of here. I'm going to exit out of there. Right. Let's have a look at an Adobe product first of all. I'm going to just load up After Effects. I'm not going to do anything complex in After Effects itself, but I'll just show you how to get the media into the right place from the main window. So with After Effects, because it's an add-on codec, in a moment I'll show you where to get the codecs from our website. Because it's an add-on codec, you can't use the main rendering interface. You have to send to media encoder. Okay, cool. So I have got a new composition started up. I am just going to very quickly bring in one of my media clips, like so. Okay, let's just bring that onto a composition. Okay, so the process here is the same whether I'm converting a video or if I've got a fully animated setup composition that I've made in After Effects. Either way, what we want to do is you want to go onto the composition that contains the final thing that you want to render. Then you can either go to Composition and add to Adobe Media Encoder queue, or if you know the shortcut, you can press Control, Alt and M. That will open up Media Encoder for us. Okay, so once we are in Media Encoder, it always surprises me how long Media Encoder takes to load up. Almost there. There we go. Okay. Okay, so once we are in Media Encoder, we have to wait for it to refresh. So sometimes I find that it refreshes a little quicker if I click out of it. There we go. So it's added the job straight into my Media Encoder queue here, and actually it's matched it up with the last settings that I used in my Media Encoder. Obviously you can just open these files straight. If you're just converting clips into AIM, you can just come straight into the media encoder and use the plus button there to actually add a file on. So I could locate one of my files, one there, like so, and I can add it in like that. I'm going to get both of these. So if you've installed, I'll show you in a moment where to find the Adobe plugins. Once you've got your AI plugins loaded, your AIM plugins loaded, on this first menu you should have an entry for AIM, Avolites AI. Let's get rid of that second one. Cool. Got AIM, Avolites AI. So then on the settings button next to it, mine says custom at the moment. If we give that a click, so this will open up the window where we can actually go finer and deeper with our encoding settings. Okay, great. I'm going to just get rid of that one. Okay. Okay, so within my codec settings here on the right, so we've got two main sections to look at. We've got the video section and we've got the audio section. If you want to export audio, it's worth making sure that you have your export audio tab ticked, like so. And you'll see here it's reporting no audio when we're going to render a file that has no audio. Okay, so let's just bring this window down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so in the video section, obviously we've got our resolution there, got our frames per second. So we then have some settings which are specific to AIM. We have discard alpha channel or preserve alpha channel. So basically, if the clip already has a transparency channel, an alpha channel, we are either going to discard it or keep it, basically. So if I want my clip to still have its transparency, I do that. It's worth remembering that a clip with an alpha channel will be 33% larger than a clip with no alpha channel. And that is simply because on a non-alpha clip, we have 3 channels of data, red, green and blue, and on an alpha channel clip we have 4 channels of data, red, green, blue and alpha. So it's 33% extra in size. The next box down is our optimize for. So I find personally that these days this box is less relevant. Let's give you an explanation of what we got. These are the 3 quality settings essentially. Superstream is the biggest and the best. That's the one we use when we convert automatically in our transcoder software. Superstream is very, very close to uncompressed. It's essentially a sequence of pre-rendered images, and then they pass through the GPU and those images are put into a sequence in real time. It has the best color reproduction, it has the best image quality. One of the tasks for a specific job was that we had to deliver a codec that was as good as, if not better than, ProRes, and we genuinely believe that Superstream is that codec. If you do have the need to go deep, we do have a 70-page white paper on the AIM codec, how it works, how it analyzes its output in comparison to other codecs. So if you want that, that is available through us. Get in contact, we can provide that for you. If you don't want to read 70 pages of fairly dry document, just take it for granted that Superstream is the best. So performance is a slightly lower bandwidth media file. It will produce a smaller file size, but rather with Superstream we have a solid image for every single frame of our video. Each pixel is recorded uniquely. With performance and also the quality, instead of having an uncompressed video file, it sort of looks at the difference between frames and reduces the file size by not repeating pixels which are the same as they were in a previous frame. So this will give you a smaller file size, but it will require a little bit of CPU usage in real time to sort of decompress it. And if you want to have very high quality images, performance is probably not the one to go for. Um, Always, like for things like fractals, for ice fields, for forests, for mountains, nature, faces, always use SuperStream. That said, performance has a load of great applications, maybe VJing in clubs or playing more graphic content. Um, Depends on your requirements, really. Quality is the one in between the two. Um, will give a slightly bigger file size, but like I mentioned with performance, it's looking at the difference between pixels rather than recording every single pixel in every frame. So let's choose SuperStream. The encode threads. Now again, this one is becoming less relevant. This has nothing to do with the playback. This is purely when you're rendering this clip out this one time. And it's how many threads on your processor to use. Now this is more relevant to people who are maybe running content houses and doing a lot of complex processes at the same time. Maybe they're 3D modeling in an app, they've got a visualization going on and they're rendering content out. And this just allows you to limit the quantity of threads used for this specific render. So sometimes when you use a rendering program, it will jump in and it will take all the power of the machine, and then everything else that you're doing really becomes very slow and stops you from working. So this just allows you to put a sort of a bandwidth limit on how much of your computing power is used for this one-time render. Then in the audio tab, let's have a quick look at there. So we actually Adobe just provide us with two standard audio rates here, 44.1 kilohertz and 48 kilohertz. So we choose either of those. 44.1 is perfectly adequate as CD quality audio. In terms of channels, we offer in Adobe, and this is a limitation of the Adobe SDK that we found very recently, we can offer mono, stereo, or 5.1. I did say that we can go 7.1, and we can, and so in other applications which don't have the limitations of the Adobe SDK, you can actually get to 7.1 or 8 channels. You've also got a bit depth there. For me, 16-bit is perfectly adequate. Again, that is CD quality audio. You can go higher if you want, but you're going to have to be using a fairly high-end digital audio system to even be able to connect the devices together in 32-bit. Okay, so once we've made all of our settings and we're happy with how things are, we can accept those values. In fact, what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to save that as a preset. So let's go up to Save Preset. Let's call that Aaron's Aim Settings. There we go. So we can OK that. And so now, because I've actually just saved that all as a preset, I can add another file now. There we go. And actually, that is now a preset that I've made for the AIM codec. And then once we're happy with everything, here in Media Encoder, we can just press the play button, and then that is going to cruise through our rendering for us. I might actually stop this one before we get to the end, because no one needs to sit here watching a load of renders. The important things to watching this really is the progress bar. That's the most important one, and I always find the remaining time is quite useful as well. Okay, so I'm going to just, rather than just sit here and watching that one rolling along, I am going to stop that one. Let's pause and stop the queue. Okay. So then last but not least, let's have a quick look at, in fact, before we do that, let us very quickly have a look at where to get the AIM plugins for Adobe products. So although I was using Media Encoder and I came from After Effects there, we do have AIM import and export plugins for the Adobe suite, for the general Adobe suite. So it can be used directly in Premiere. It means you can import AIM clips directly into After Effects, and you can use it for importing and outporting in the Adobe Media Encoder. So if you go on to, let's go back there, go to the Avolites website, go to the support section, he says, And then in the support section, there we go. If you go to software, go to downloads and AI, and then there we go. So just here we have the AIM codec installer for Adobe products. We've got a Windows installer which allows you to just literally run an executable and that will install the plugins in the correct place for you. There is an OS X installer, and we have a Windows manual installer. I really do recommend, if you click on the more info tabs, there is an installation guide that we've done, and we've updated that very recently as well. It gives you full guide, and it will even take you through actually rendering from your preferred video editor of choice in the Adobe suite. Whilst we are on that page, we also, in the manual installer, and also installed when you go through the OS X manual install, you'll find the 32-bit QuickTime components as well. So in 2018, Adobe stopped supporting 32-bit QuickTime plugins, which is what the AIM codec was based on. We updated that to work with the 64-bit versions of Adobe products. And actually that version uses FFmpeg to render out the AIM codec. But if you are not using an Adobe product and you're not converting an AI and you are using another app and you've installed those codecs, again that document, the more info document, takes you through the manual installation of those. What would you see? So let's have a look. I'm going to run MPEG stream clip. So this is a piece of PC software. Now obviously to use 32-bit QuickTime components you will have to have an operating system which supports those. So the most recent versions of OS X do not support 32-bit QuickTime. It's worth bearing that in mind. So this MPEG stream clip, this is a nice free bit of software. It's been around for many moons. 2006 is the date at the top, but it still works nicely for us. So with MPEG stream clip, I can open my file, go to my clip, select my clip, and open that one up. Brilliant. I don't know if it will actually play. Well, there we go. Play AIM clips for us. Not every encoder which can convert will play the actual media. And so then I am going to go to File, and this one kind of catches you out. I think if you go into Edit QuickTime you don't see what we need, but if we go and Export to Other Formats is the correct one on here. Now in our Compression tab, and I'll drop down next to Compression, if we click on that and we realise we've got QuickTime Movie selected, which is right because that's the overall codec group that the AIM codec is in. And then in the Options tab just to the right, we can open up the standard QuickTime window. Many of us haven't seen this window for quite a few moons. And if we click on the Settings section in the Video section, this will give us another final pop-up window. And in the Compression type, we should have AIM at the top, AIM. So we're going to see a very similar set of settings to what we saw in the Adobe Media Encoder. Our first one is whether or not our transparency is preserved in our file. And just to pick up on a point here, if my clip doesn't have an alpha channel or a transparency channel and I tell it to preserve the alpha channel, it's not going to make a useful alpha channel. It's just going to be full screen, which either means you see nothing or everything. We've got our optimize for, so that was performance, quality, superstream. And then we've got our threads again. With the threads, I would just generally leave it on the maximum number of threads. You just get a quicker render that way. And on this one, we just have stereo because we've updated. It's only the more recent version of the AIM codec which has support for greater amounts of audio in there. I would probably choose like a lossless audio codec or something like that. Okay, so just a brief recap then. So we can either bring in media directly into AI. We can use the Transcoder page in there. So that was the tab on the top right of the performance page. We can run in Adobe products. So that is Media Encoder, After Effects, Premiere. Or you can use any 32-bit QuickTime compatible software. So I've used MPEG Streamclip. I think Virtual Dub, the new version of Virtual Dub 2, they released very, very recently, like in the last few days. That's applicable. Basically, if it's a QuickTime 32 compatible encoder, you should be able to run AI encoding inside of there. So I think we're kind of probably about there for today. I've just realised I've ignored the chat room completely there. Good afternoon, Steve. Thank you very much for sharing as usual. I completely forgot I had my chat room window open. Good afternoon to everyone who's tuned in via the Everything Stage Network. Good afternoon, Karai. Good to have you with us. And thank you, Sam, for putting out the download link there as well. I think, really, in the scheme of things, I'm kind of there for today's session. So just to go back and just sort of recover, when you're converting, if you've got an option, always use the AIM codec. Always use SuperStream. If your file has it, we can have up to 8 channels of audio. And as of version 11 onwards, you don't have to have that panic of, oh my goodness, what have they delivered me the content in? You can just take it in whatever format they've used, as long as they've used something common. Could be ProRes, it could be a standard AVI format, anything like that, then you should be able to deal with it. Okay, so if you go along to, let me find my little page here. I've got a list of, oh my goodness, there we go. There we go. So if you head on over to avolites.com/online resources, you can see our upcoming timetable for this week. I should probably talk very briefly about the session I am running on Friday. So Friday, we've got a salvation session scheduled. Now I know some people out there are not going to want to touch it at all, but I know that there are a lot of people out there who are keen to dive into some salvation. Now normally the sessions are 45 minutes long, and I had a bit of a discussion today, and I said that I think I need more than 45 minutes to just even cover the basics with salvation. So this Friday we are going to do, by popular request, we are going to do an extended session. I'm still going to start at 4:30, but instead of 45 minutes I'm going to go on for an hour and a half. So it's going to be 4:30 to 5 o'clock. What my intention is, there's no way I can show a whole coding language in an hour. It will take, I mean, if you look at my YouTube playlist for salvation, that is quite a few good hours, and that really just scratches the surface. So what I intend to do, I intend to Steve, if you can, you see Sam's link just above there, avolites.com/online resources. That's the upcoming session list. So the salvation session, what I intend to do, I'm going to concentrate on the first hour or so of giving you fundamental knowledge of how the system interacts, how things are structured, how to edit things, how to update things, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to try and leave some time for salvation questions. Now, there is a chance that no one's going to turn up with any questions. I find that hard to believe given salvation. But if so, I will just talk for the whole hour and a half. If there are enough of you that come into the session on Friday and let me know in the chat that you are actively interested in further salvation training, I might see what I can do about running a little salvation series, but that really is going to depend on how much support it gets, because it's quite a lot of work for me to prepare for a salvation session. Anyway, so enough of me talking right now. What I'm going to do, I think we're going to call this one a day here, but I'm going to keep an eye on this chat, so you can come into the chat and the comments on this video and you can add them there, and I'll see the updates even if that happens after I've closed the session. And I'll keep an eye on it for the next few hours, and if you do have any questions about encoding AIM, fire them in there. Don't forget you can contact us on support@avolitesmedia.com. There we go. Good to see someone as excited, Juan. We'll see how excited you all are after an hour and a half of me talking about it on Friday. Okay, so Cade is up in about 5 of our good hours. He's going to talk about networking and a few other things that I've actually forgotten about. So do tune in, we'll all learn. Gordon will be back on Wednesday at 3:30. I believe he's got another guest. And then Friday, you're going to have Gordon and me and Cade. Cade's on Wednesday as well, of course. But do check avolites.com/online resources for an update on the timetable. Thank you very much for tuning, and I hope to catch you all soon.